What's up, guys? Hey, how's it going? It's Carlos. I'm on assignment. I have left the beautiful state of Anchorage. I haven't posted in a while, and I didn't really tell the reason. I don't know if anybody noticed, but people are still subscribing, so I figured, hey, let's make some content. One of the things that I've sort of been dealing with is that I went to California. I thought I was going to move. I took a lot of my stuff and then a lot of my paint stuff. And my family and I got some news while we were there. Hey, wait a second. It's not going to happen. And needless to say, that was slightly upsetting for myself and for my family. So, with all my paint there, I was still painting a little bit, but I was going through maybe a bit of a transition. So when I came back, I tried to get back into the swing of things, but it just kind of, a lot of things happened. It was the holiday season. And anyways, I guess this is just like a zillion excuses. But I do feel it again. I feel strong again. The break has been good. I've made some other moves, so the other side of life is going to be hopefully worked out real soon. I'd like to build, and when I say build, I mean like the idea of build. I'd like to, have a more professional studio as opposed to filming in front of a laundry machine and that kind of thing. So, inch by inch, little by little, one of the things that I know about myself since I've been painting these last few years is that I do go through these kind of periods regardless of what is the impetus, but I do go through periods where I don't produce, I don't paint. And one of the things I was trying to do while I was, painting up Dark Imperium is to avoid burnout. Because when I was painting, part of my idea and part of what I was doing is I don't play Warhammer per se. Don't have enough time, and at the rate that I paint, it's just the kind of way I want to paint plus the speed that I paint, I just can't produce enough for an army. So knowing that about myself and being honest with myself, I was like, well, what can I do? I don't want to fill up my room with a bunch of minis. And I think that, I don't forget who I've heard say it, but it's also kind of good, I think, to get rid of, things that you've done. Because I wouldn't want to sit amid a bunch of masterpieces and be constantly reminded how what I'm working on right now isn't, necessarily working out as much as I'd like. And that's another thing. Like sometimes, and I was going through this myself, sometimes, especially when there's a lot of distractions, what you're painting doesn't necessarily happen the way you want it to. It just kind of never comes together. I had 4 or 5 works in progress, and I didn't like the way that one was going, and I didn't like the way that one was going, which basically means there's some kind of underlying issue. So rather than kind of fight it, I just was like, well, it's not time for that. So anyways, background aside, when you do go through periods like that, I would say just give into it, or not give into it, but accept it. Accept that you're not always going to be 100% creative. Sometimes I pick up miniatures. Let me think of one. The Nurgle Blightlord, or whatever his name is. The guy that came with Dark Imperium, the big boss, the guy with the huge axe, pretty much just painted itself. I was just kind of there holding the brush, but the idea and the scheme just kind of, I already saw it, And that happens sometimes. It's great when it happens, but also it's kind of fleeting, because sometimes it's really work. And if you enjoy the hobby, then that can kind of, I guess can be frustrating if the muse is so elusive. So anyhow, I would say, don't get down on yourself if you're not in the mood for painting. you know. If you're more of like a player and you're more of an army focused guy, then disregard, you know. I guess you got to get your minis painted before your tournament, right? So, I don't know. I'm continuing to evaluate and like think about my processes. Right now, I don't have any of my materials. I'm in Oklahoma. I'm not in Alaska, so I'm just kind of thinking mostly about what I'm going to do, what my plans are. I kind of want to get into more. I want to paint a bust. I think I'd like to do a military model, but again, you know, these are. I was telling my wife that when I'm on vacation, I like everything sounds like a great idea. I'm like, I should like start kayaking maybe, or maybe I'll become an archer, you know, just start target shooting. I don't know, that kind of stuff. So I guess, anyhow, more to the point. I got this book. Looks backwards on there. Maybe I'll flip it, hopefully, when I get my editing. It's called The Rise of Fantasy by Vallejo. So I figured, you know, one of the things that I sort of wanted to do is provide like a review. Now, I don't have any kind of system. I do want to do a thorough look into it, and I want to see, you know, what can provide value. I know I've been dismissive in the past, or maybe I've encouraged people to kind of spread their wings, because really I wish somebody would have told me that. Like, and many people actually did say it. A lot of artists are like, you know, don't just copy what other people do. The thing is that when you begin, you really need to, I would say for me, since I had no training, I needed that technique. Like, I needed to know what people were doing. So I wouldn't disparage like somebody who wants to ape or copy another person's style. That's just, I mean, that's how you learn, right? And I said also, and it's really boring, and unfortunately, the way I do it, I did a lot of trial and error, but you need to master technique. So like I would paint a miniature from start to finish, but I wouldn't necessarily focus on the technique. Now it's kind of dull if you paint a miniature entirely in one way, like you just glaze everything or you put washes on everything. But and I didn't. So I would practice many techniques on many miniatures. You know, I would just keep throwing technique and technique and technique. And you really, like, on many of them, I'd be like, man, I've spent 15 hours on this, and this just looks, you know, like I hardly did anything to it. So that's one of the things that happens. You kind of, as your skill develops, you don't really see it because it's so slow. You know, developing the kind of miniature painting skills, it takes years. It took me years. So really, like, it's all about the journey. And now that's what I'm trying to say. I kind of get it. It's about the journey. So when people, you know, I think that, like, and I think I was saying that because I had amassed a lot of books, a lot of magazines, all about painting, and they kind of all blended together. And that's another thing. When you're painting and you get further and further away from the study that you put in, your technique begins to kind of erode over time. So it's really good to go back to the basics, even for me, even for probably people who are professional, and kind of like refine those techniques. I think that, like, it's a continual process. Like you kind of put everything together, you learn how to do things. Like, if I was to make an analogy in a fighting game, if you, like Street Fighter, I don't know if anybody is familiar with that, if you can't really throw a fireball whenever you want to, it's tough to get to the next level, right? It's tough to, like, develop strategy. So your strategy is reliant on these skills that you have. So, like, when it comes to composition and larger pieces, if you have this big vision but you don't necessarily have the skills to get you there, it's kind of, I would say, discouraging. And there's other ways of doing things, and, you know, many other opinions are available. So, yeah, who am I, right? So anyhow, I'm going to review it. I'm going to have a look at it. I'm going to share with you guys, because I think a lot of this stuff, many reviews are actually fairly uncritical. And I don't want to slam Vallejo. I mean, I buy a bunch of their stuff. By the way, Vallejo, you know, still open to that sponsorship opportunity if you guys are, you know, looking. So anyhow, yeah, I want to see, you know, I wanted to share that with you guys. And if it's, you know, something that people enjoy, then maybe I'll do it again. So anyhow, that's your status update. Hopefully I can get this read and reviewed in a timely fashion. And we'll talk to you guys soon.